Wide out. Power. Wide out. Power. Shove. Pull and pull, pull and pull, pull and pull. A.
This athlete certainly has started quickly here, Paula.
Yeah, he's attacking well up the hill as well. You can see him gritting his teeth, trying to keep his sights and his eyes fixed on, not on the top of the hill, but just on the heels of the British runner ahead of him, James St. Murray there to... Yeah, he looks okay. I think he's comfortable. He's actually extended that gap slightly over the Portuguese team behind him. Belgium now moving through it and starting to challenge the Spanish team.
Yeah, McMurray's
Good evening, good people. Welcome to the Power Hour show, brought to you courtesy of Perfect Balance Clinic. It's a show where we're talking running. It's a show where we're talking issues that matter to runners, whether they are beginners, they are developers, or they are performers. It's everybody sharing their story and hopefully in the process inform and inspire and inspire other athletes along the way. And hopefully as we do that, we can also do so in a rather entertaining way. Now, I've had many athletes and many coaches on the show, and we've shared great stories over the time. But I've not had an opportunity, a plenty one, to have a marathon runner, because they're always running. You can't get out of them, most of the time. To get them to stop, to give you a discussion, it's like, oops, I'm missing out on my mileage. But fortunately, I have had, the grace of Kuda Kwashe, to come in and, have chats with us and share some of the same concerns, some of the same issues that we've spoken about for sprinters, for jumpers, for middle distance runners, for coaches. And this time we want to hear what pole vaulters, jumpers, yes. We want to hear how the situation has been like for dear marathon community. and this is through, the lens of Kuda's own story on the running. Kuda, welcome onto the show, and thank you very much for accepting, get away from your mileage, duties, as it were. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Stan.
Right.
Happy to be here.
Good. Just give us a bit of your background. I know you run, you probably are still recovering from running a marathon now, but who is Kuda Kwashe Kanuti?
Right, my background is in football. I played Premier League football in Zimbabwe. I've got a bit of military background, which fits into my running as well. So I'm a football player from Zimbabwe. When we settled here, I could not get to continue playing football. So I transitioned from football to marathon running.
Quite something there. And I find that, interesting, that a transition from football into running. And what components of football did you find easy to use to transition into running when you couldn't continue with football?
Right, the way we played football, already roadwork was part of our training. So there were some times that my football team would go for long runs. Not exactly marathon length, perhaps maybe 10 kilometers, a 10-kilometer run. And anyway, when we were not in training, we were encouraged to do our own training. And I mostly did road work on Chitungwiza Road. And a lot of people who are from Chitungwiza who know about football would know it well that Norman Mapeza, the national team captain, used to be seen running on the Chitungwiza Road. So that was part of our training routines to go on the road and run some long distance.
So it wasn't easy for you then to remember, I can handle long distance, because we used to do it in training anyway when I was, still with the football thing. But it's easy to do that in a football environment, on a team, because there's that team spirit, there's that social spirit. There's 11 or more than 11 of you doing it. And yet marathon is long distance running on the road. Can be pretty solitary. How did you transition into that emotionally, and maybe even from a mental standpoint?
No, but even when we were back home, the 10 kilometers that we used to do, it used to be just either two of you or just one of you, because that training was your own training back then. So we used to go on that 10-kilometer race, road running. It was part of our routine already, doing that. Then obviously when you transition to the longer distances, the mental preparation, I suppose it's hard when you're training by yourself, but once you're in an actual race and there's a lot of people, that team, that you're not lonely anymore, because everyone is participating, and it does feel like a team sport. And even a lot of people are very encouraging when you're running. They come along, and the spectators as well in a marathon will tell you, you're just 40 kilometers away. You should have finished. So it's only solitary when you are training by yourself now, if you are preparing for a marathon. But once you are in the actual race, that comradeship is there now. Because with other people. Yeah.
Everyone supports everyone else in a marathon. It's not like the selfish sprinter community where.
Well, I don't know what happens with the elite runners, because obviously when you run, the elite runners take up the first starting block. I don't know what sort of, because they are going a near fully sprinting. So I don't know what sort of encouragement they give to each other. It's really solitary out there. But the second block, the more social runners, everyone is encouraging each other. The recreational runners.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, let's get back here before we get to to see you in a race descriptor mode. Let's get back to where it all started. When it started. How did you transition from football, and you played football quite a lot, from football into long distance running? How did it start? Is this kind of, well, definitely not couch to 5K, or did you do any of those 3Ks, 5Ks, 10Ks, park runs? How did it all start for you?
Okay. When I was playing football back home, when I had to prepare to join the army, I had to run the 21-kilometer command of the army race, because I wanted to know how I was going to feel like when you actually do the training. So I ran the 21-kilometer command of the army race. I was younger, I didn't even do any proper training, and I finished quite good in that one. So it was just natural, really. There was no problems. But when I was over here playing football, there was a time when we were playing football a lot with the boys in the park. We'd play like 5 days a week, and we kept fit. Then there came a time we could not play as much. And I started noticing that I was gaining weight, something that had never concerned me before. So because I was worried about gaining weight, I thought, what can I do? All my friends were scattered. We could not play football as much as we used to do. So I remember that I ran the command of 21-kilometer race, and I finished it. So that was my time. I said, I'm going to get back into running half marathons. So initially, I decided to come back to half marathons because I'd run it before. And I ran about, when I came back into it, I ran about 10, 15 half marathons before I started feeling that it's no longer a challenge. The half marathon, 21 kilometers, was no longer a challenge. It is hard, but I could finish it easy without stopping. So I decided, let me go a step further. That's when I focused on the marathon. So I started training for the marathon. So basically, the motivation was to remain fit, but because I couldn't train with my boys, because everyone is scattered, is moved all over the country. In fact, the initial point where I lost all my friends was when I moved up to the north, to Durham, to university. And got all my friends that I used to play football with, I was out of the way. So basically, life got busy. I didn't get to play football as much, and I started gaining weight. So the easiest way to lose weight again was to run, which is more a sport you can do without your 11 or 22 friends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like both the reactive nature of your involvement with your not newfound because you already were doing it, but your commitment to long distance running, that it was reactive. Here you find yourself, and it was so much for health and wellness reasons. But also the lack of social engagement which you had in a group environment, playing with your friends and footballers, you having left your community to go up north to Durham University. And so you had to do something. You had to call back on your background of sport excuse me, for you to be able to do that. Which is not an easy thing. It is never an easy thing for anyone to make such a decision. But there you are, you're deciding not only to start going into a single sport. Of course, you are motivated because of your health and wellness reasons. That is a motivation in itself. But not many people would go and run a marathon because they have got health and wellness concerns. What do you put it down to?
I think if you ever have to carry a big belly, and I think I haven't done it, but I think it's a bigger burden than just running 42 kilometers and keeping it at bay. So I think that's a big motivation there, where you are trying to avoid the inconvenience of not being able to tie your own shoes. I don't know if you understand where I'm coming from.
Yeah. I know that. You have to go sideways of your packs.
Yeah.
For them.
It just feels like such an inconvenience. And even now, because before we didn't know, like I'm actually going against my grandfather when I run this marathon. When my grandfather told me when I was young that he wanted me to be, I'm from Zaraban, and we had a district administrator there was called Minyoro. And he said he wanted me to look like Minyoro when I grow up, become a clerk and have a big belly. So there was a time when that was the in thing. Then people started understanding that that's not probably healthy. It's inconvenient, but now we know for a fact that it's really, really unhealthy. So if you think about what Boris Johnson has said recently about, he started running because of his obesity issues, is actually benefiting health-wise.
Yeah.
So I think that's the big motivation for me, the health aspect, that it's hard to do, but if you manage to keep your weight down, you avoid a lot of inconveniences.
Yeah. Did you, at that point or at any point, really relate your long, slow runs to the health impact that they would have on you? Did you actually relate to that? Or was it based on any research, or was it just running community talk, and it's just, anecdotal evidence that's there? It's just a social evidence that's there from what you've seen.
I think initially it was just vanity to say, I don't want to look like that. So initially it was just vanity. But only with this pandemic, that's when we started hearing that, actually being healthy is a good thing. Like people saying, but that if you are obese, it's actually, it can cause you, I think type 2 diabetes is caused by obesity, specifically not, but I haven't really looked into it, but I've started hearing things like this now, that if you are obese, you are susceptible maybe to type 2 diabetes, just like that, to cancers. So initially when I did it was vanity, that I don't want to look like that. But once I'm doing it, I start hearing about the core, well-researched scientific arguments for staying healthy. So it's quite coincidental that obviously I wanted to look good, not to inconvenience myself with weight. Now, because everyone is a scientist now because of COVID, for 8 months, all we've been hearing is about comorbidities, health. So it's become left, right. It's come at me now left, right, and center that actually keeping fit has these benefits. Even though I didn't do a proper research, like you would say, scientific research, to say if I win, what are the benefits?
Listen, Kuda, I'll give you a water break, just a little water break. And when we come back, I'd like us now to look at, share with us and share with listeners and viewers here, what your training regime looked like at the start when you started doing your half marathons.
Yes.
And how did that go about? What sort of setup did you have around you, and what sort of programs were you doing? Where were you doing this? What were the structures that were there, or was it just Kuda doing what Kuda does best? When we come back. If you've just joined us, it's the Power Hour show, courtesy of Perfect Balance Clinic. your sports injury specialists, you know, very holistic. It's a 360 degrees approach that they have there in way of getting you treated. And why I'm on the show is because coming with your injury, you meet your osteopath, you meet your physiotherapist, you meet your massage, you meet basically every your nutritionist. You get there, and when it's time to get back to play, you meet me. I help you get back on the track and get back on the road and get you back to the podium. Tonight we're talking about the marathon, and Kuda has been kind enough to come along to help us tell his story, you know, the way he is doing so candidly doing here, but over the distance of a marathon. Before we went on a water break, could I say your training regimes? Training for a marathon is not exactly like a training for any other thing, is it?
Yes. When I started, I was preparing for a half marathon. So I tried to run 4 kilometers when I started to run a half marathon. I tried to run 4 kilometers and I couldn't finish it. I was gasping. It was embarrassing. So I did that. But obviously the half marathon, my first half marathon when I came back was in 2015, the Ealing half marathon. So I did this about in January and I could not finish 4 kilometers on my initial run. Then I would run again. I tried 5 kilometers and I would walk back. But what happens is, as you do that, running long distance training, actually what they say is the distance that you couldn't do when you started training at some point becomes your warm up. So the more you run, the more you get conditioned to be able to run the distance. So there was a time when I could do 4 kilometers easy, even before I couldn't do it before. Then I moved it up to 8 kilometers running. So once I could do that, you get into a routine. So my training routine, once I had a bit of rhythm, was that I would run 5 miles on a Monday, rest on Tuesday, run 5 miles again on a Wednesday, rest day, do another 5, then I'll do a longer distance on Sunday. So I'd run 5 miles one day, take a rest, alternate to another 5 miles. Then on a Sunday, I'd run a longer distance, maybe double that. So that's my own preparation. I might have taken it off Runner's World because I read a lot of running magazines as well. So although it was suitable for me, I might have taken it off from Runner's World and other magazines.
Yeah. Now that's an interesting point there, because I think there are many athletes out there who would rely on running literature and coaching that's online or it's on magazines. How, you know, what can you tell me about share regarding that in terms of how you know, what were the pros and cons, if any, you know, in a reflection over the years now that you've been doing it with e-literature and e-magazines online, basically go out there, pick out a running program and run away with it. What was your experience with them?
I think it was quite helpful because if I remember when I ran the first half marathon back in Zimbabwe, the commander of the Army half marathon, I had no access to any information about training, about breathing, about whatever. I did not have anything. It was just me being young and foolish. I can do anything. But now with these magazines, you get a lot of advice, and some of the advice is useful. But one thing that people might not know about half marathons is you gotta listen to your body, because so when you read this magazine, they tell you gotta listen to your body. If you feel you cannot go on, just stop.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, if you go to a marathon thinking I just want to win it, do my utmost best and you haven't trained properly, people have actually died running marathons. I remember in the London Marathon, I think a soldier from the 3 Commando of the United Kingdom Armed Forces died running that marathon. And that's a supremely fit person because the Special Forces guy. But in running that, I think he collapsed before, like some 3 miles before the finish. So when you read these magazines, they tell you about your training, which is good. Then they also give you advice about listening to your body. Because if you just try to be a hero or try to go all out, you might collapse and not recover. So I think it's useful. What I find in the e-literature, as opposed to what I had before the advent of these e-matters. It's really easy. Yeah, and information is always a good thing, especially reliable information, not fake news.
Yeah, that's good. It will be a good. Obviously a good thing if you know what you're looking for, just like anything, information on anything else.
Yes.
If you know what you're looking for, you probably have a higher radar on the validity and the reliability of that information. You know.
I suppose the first thing on this one is what magazine are you reading? So if it's Runner's World, you know this is a proven. It's like a proven magazine. Then if it's some obscure alternative new age thing, you might get misled. So I think the best point for me would be to read the reputable publications in the field. But obviously, what you say as well helps. You gotta be able to discern as well what's useful and what might be just guesswork.
Yeah. No, absolutely, absolutely. Good insights there. Nothing beats knowledge insofar as running, and like anything else, most or engagements in life. Knowledge really is the gateway to accomplishments and performances within any sphere of human endeavor. And finding the right knowledge for the marathon, for half marathon, and as you put it, getting it from reputable and recommended resources would be helpful as a starting point. But you also want from there then dovetail it down to your own individual needs and the individual levels where you are at. Because that's what it is. What is put out in the magazine could have been meant for a certain level and a certain personality and a certain position of training. Yes. Where they are at, yes. And therefore you need to break it down to digest it at the level that every athlete is at. But it's good to have that. It provides that structure. It provides that guidance. To get on. So really useful on that front. Yes, it's really useful. Right. Now, competition. Which competition did you then first, like what competition sits on your mind and says, this is the competition that confirmed that I could run a 21K. Well, you did that, in your
previously,
military commitment. But which one is a competition where, as an athlete, I've gone to this competition for a half marathon and it just has confirmed that I'm good enough to go for the full marathon?
Okay, I ran the Ealing half marathon in 2015. I finished it, but I had to walk at some points, so I wasn't quite happy about that towards the end, because I think I ran the first 30 miles in British measurements. So I ran after about 10 miles. I ran all that. But the last 2 to 3 miles, I had to walk, run, just to finish. So I did that. Then the follow after 2 months or so, 3 months, I ran the North London half marathon. That one I ran from start to finish and finish. So that was the one that I said, okay, I can do this. Because I ran without stopping. I ran the full 13.1 miles without stopping at all. Non-stop running. So that would have been my third marathon when I come back. So I ran that one, then I ran Barcelona and Watford, then I ran the North London half. When I finished that one without stopping, then I felt, okay, I can do this. And I started thinking about the marathon then to say, oh, could I run double this distance now? This one now just is a way of challenging myself. Because at some point, 21 kilometers, like I was saying to you earlier, that the distance that you fear when you start, at some point becomes your warm-up distance.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, okay, 21 kilometers, I can do that. I need another challenge. Let me do the 42 kilometers. But I promise you this as well. You don't say 21 kilometers is the warm-up distance when you're running it. During the race, you are thinking, why did I sign up for this? It's only when you get home when you say, okay, let me look for another challenge. But each time you run, you're saying, why did I sign up for this? Am I mad? So when you finish, you feel good about yourself and you say, okay, let's take it up. But I'm not going to go beyond 42 kilometers. That's my cutoff point. I'm not going to look for an ultra. I'm not going to look to run 50 kilometers or anything. It is hard.
Are you sure? Did you think you were going to run even 21 Ks when you were playing football?
No, but I've run 3 marathons now. I've run Geneva Marathon, the Moscow Marathon, and one in Lithuania. And out of those 3 marathons, I've never felt when I come back that, okay, let's take it up to Comrades Marathon. Because I think Comrades Marathon in South Africa is 90 kilometers. I've never felt enthused to take up anything like that. So I think 42.2 kilometers is my final distance. The only thing I would do is, obviously, I'm just going to try to keep beating my time to do better than the 42.2. But I'm not going to try to get another longer distance. So the only challenge now is to get my time lower each time I run.
Yeah.
I'm not going to look for a longer distance.
When you say you want to get your time lower, what's your current time and how long has it taken you to get to where it currently is? Where did you start off from, and what did you do in between to bring about that change in the times?
Previously, because the cutoff point for the marathon, the first one I ran was 5 hours 30 minutes. So when I ran that one, I just didn't want to be. It would be embarrassing to run a marathon, then they stop you and say, okay, that's it. You're not finishing. The time is done. So my time was just to go do it under 5 hours 30 minutes. And I think I finished in 5 hours. Then in Geneva, I took off 30 minutes on there. I don't know if I can say I specifically did anything, because I think it was just running longer and faster. I didn't do any proper preparation to say. At this time, when I train, like sometimes I run 21 kilometers in 2 hours 30 minutes. So when I train for the next one, I try to run that 21 kilometers in 2 hours. So if I manage to keep that pace when I run the marathon, that means my time will be lower as well. But the other thing is that they have pacers. When you run the marathon, they have pacers for your time. So if you are really mentally prepared, all you need to do is to keep up with your pacers. If you want to do it in 4 hours, you start with the 4-hour pacers, and you keep up with them throughout. If you want to do it in 3 hours and 30 minutes, you do the same thing. Start with the 3 hour 30 minutes pacers and stay with them. And those guys are accurate. They finish the marathon in 3 hours 30 minutes if that's the pace that they're running. Yeah.
Okay. Great stuff there, Kuda. In closing, I'd like you to talk about your recent marathon. You went to Moscow for a marathon.
Yes.
I want to you to share your preparation,
Regarding let's call it the Moscow
pandemic. It's in the middle of the pandemic, and you travel out to Moscow, and you compete, and you find all manner of restrictions and variances in your expectations, and you come back and you meet all manner of things. When we come back, let's hear that story, Kuda. Let's hear that story on our way back.
Wide out. Power. Wide out. Power. Shuffle. Pull and pull, pull and pull, pull and pull. A.
This athlete certainly has started quickly here, Paula.
Yeah, he's attacking well up the hill as well. You can see him gritting his teeth, trying to keep his sights and his eyes fixed on, not on the top of the hill, but just on the heels of the British runner ahead of him, James McMurray there yeah, he looks okay. I think he's comfortable. He's actually extended that gap slightly over the Portuguese team behind him. Belgium now moving through it and starting to challenge the Spanish team.
Yeah, McMurray's
Just a few clips there that goes on within our community world, courtesy of Perfect Balance Clinic. But we should have a clip of you running the marathon there soon enough, and we must get that off you, Kuda. Anyway,
yes.
The Moscow Marathon. Tell us.
The Moscow disaster, you mean?
Why did you even decide in the middle of a pandemic you're going to go to Moscow for a Moscow Marathon? How did that happen, and how did you prepare for it? Tell us the story.
Right. I've been because I was registered to run in the Geneva Marathon, so I already started training for Geneva in May. Then they cancelled it. Then I registered in the Netherlands Marathon. They cancelled it as well. So all the training was going to waste. But I registered in the Moscow Marathon because I've always traveled to Moscow. I've got a few friends in Moscow in the army, so I go and visit them from time to time. So when Russia was the only country that was open to any visitors, provided you have a negative COVID-19 test, and they kept their marathon, I decided, okay, this is a chance to now run the Moscow Marathon. Because I always wanted to run it, because in addition to the training, the physical fitness you get from it, it's actually a good way to do the sightseeing, because it's structured so in the manner that you go around like 20 or 30 Moscow landmarks. So it is good sightseeing on foot. Yes, but the problem with the Moscow Marathon was the logistics of getting there. Because I got my visa and I got my negative PCR test. Then I flew to Sweden. I was supposed to go on Lufthansa via Germany. Then Lufthansa cancelled the flight because they didn't have enough passengers or whatever. And because Lufthansa owns Swiss there, they rerouted me through Switzerland. So I flew to Switzerland. Stopped over overnight. They gave me hotel accommodation, put me on. When I was about to get the flight to Moscow in the following morning, at the boarding gate, they denied my boarding, saying non-EU citizens, non-Swiss, non-Russian are not allowed to fly from Switzerland to Russia. So they deported me back to London because I did not satisfy the new rule, the new COVID rule that had come into play while I was airborne, I think, to go to Switzerland. So I flew back and quickly changed at the airport at Heathrow onto a Russian airline flight that was going direct. So then I managed to catch because the COVID certificate has to be 72 hours old. If it's longer than 72 hours, it's no longer valid. They don't allow you to go in. So I just managed to make it in the nick of time to get into Russia on that certificate. Otherwise, I could not. They would have cancelled everything. They would have deported me back again from Russia. So the one big thing that was the one big problem traveling during a pandemic is all these calculations. You have to do all these laws. You have to know, which you don't normally need to know. Yeah. So I made the trip and I got there, despite the drama. Then we went to the race village. They were trying to, because I was very cautious about COVID-19. I was doing all the social distancing, the mask, and they were trying to do that as well with the race. But the people there, I think they just felt because they are athletes, it doesn't affect them. Because they were trying to hug me, shake my hand, take a picture with me, all the non-social distancing stuff. So I thought that was to be an issue, that I'm trying to do all the social distancing. And the Russians that I was mixing with in the race, they didn't seem concerned about that.
Okay.
So yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah.
How about the race itself? You know, what was the turnout like? What was the field like? And
Russia, they did something that surprised me, because all the major marathons have been cancelled. Even London, they only did a virtual one. But Russia went with the full field. Everyone, I think there was 12,000 runners. That's the norm. It's normally 12,000, 15,000. But obviously, some people could not travel anyway. But they ran it as if it wasn't in a pandemic. And as we were running it, the worst thing still was that as I was running it, the people were too friendly, trying to hug me again and take pictures with me. And even the spectators were so each time I was running, I had to make sure I dodged the spectators, because they were also outstretching their hands so that you can shake their hands as you go, like we do normally. So the attitude there towards the pandemic, it seemed like there wasn't a pandemic for them. The race organization itself was cognizant of the pandemic, because even there was sanitizer station when you get the water, and usually they put water in cups, but this time it was in individual bottles. So the race organizers were cognizant of the pandemic, but the public and the runners, they were very casual about it. That's the one thing that I noticed about that race. And even I would not advise anyone to organize a race in a pandemic thinking people are going to be sensible. You can only do so much to control the behavior.
Soon after, everything else kicks up, doesn't it? People remember who they are, People remember who they are, and that's what comes out first.
I think as well. I think I did not carry any scientific surveys, but I think the people that ran that, they felt because they are athletes, it's not a big problem for them, because they were so casual about it. I think that element that if you are physically fit, it doesn't affect you badly. I think that was a component of the behavior that I noticed there.
Yeah, you always there's always the social cultural influence, in interpreting and responding to any of these things, Therefore, guidelines are only dealing with the community and the social behaviors, only as those social behaviors have come to be known and to be manifested. It's trying to deal with that. Yeah, but
one thing remarkably was the support that the state gave to the race. because obviously the police were in full force and Moscow came to a standstill. They blocked all the major roads. So that one is also something important, the relationship between the marathon and the officials, that they really recognize it. And it's something that in a separate platform, I will talk about the economic benefits of marathon. But I was impressed by the state involvement in that event.
Okay.
It's actually,
Now let's talk about your own performance in the event. You've had all your good, citizenry in the running community. Your own race, how you perform there after all these back and forth, go to go to Switzerland, back the flight back, jump on another plane, go right back. How then did you translate that on the actual road, or rather, what was the route even for the marathon? Was that urban? Did you have any country roadside, or was it just pure tarmac?
Now the Moscow Marathon is pure tarmac, and it runs around all the major landmarks. Like you actually run past the Kremlin, and some of the major landmarks. Because there's 7 buildings that look exactly the same in Moscow that are called the Seven Sisters. These are the towers that were built by Stalin. So they're actually I think if you go to New York, that will be your Empire State Building. Those kind of iconic buildings. So it's all urban, and you are running around the major sites. My performance was okay, but instead of losing 30 minutes like I hoped I would do, I actually gained 30 minutes. So I've taken on a different training program that I've devised for myself, which I think will help me lose that 30 minutes. So if you recently, 2 days ago, I ran 30 kilometers in 3 hours. So that means if I run another 10 kilometers in about that time, I should be able to run under 4 hours, a marathon under 4 hours. And obviously, when you run by yourself, you're always slower. When you run with a crowd, you've got people pushing you. Yeah.
No, well done, Kuda. It's a very open story. It's a very their story, and you just shared it the way that only you can share about your own story, and I think that's been useful in itself. And
yes,
I'd like to get you back on the show another time and talk a different angle to that, maybe a more railed down kind of angle to your marathon. It was good just to hear your generic and your own view regarding your getting from football into long distance running and getting back into, and then eventually deciding on the marathon. And right now you've decided, no, I will not do anything beyond 42. Who knows, when we call you back next year, oops, I've signed up for the Comrades.
I think what's on target for me is the Boston Marathon. And what they do with the Boston Marathon, you won't believe this. If you are 80 years old and you want to run the Boston Marathon, you have to run like a qualifying race. So you got to run Moscow. If you are 80 years old, you got to run Moscow in 3 hours, 30 minutes to be able to qualify for Boston. So that's like an elite race. If you see people expecting an 80-year-old man to run 43 kilometers in 3.5 hours, that is the elite of the elite.
Yeah.
If I might bring my time down enough to be able to compete in the Boston Marathon, I will definitely have something to say, and it will be an achievement, really.
It would be.
Yeah.
Well, no doubt about that, Kuda. No doubt about that. Your own background, your own sporting background, definitely has enough latitude, and there's enough impetus there, I'm sure, for you to continue to progress and meet new milestones on that journey that will change your own perspective on what other challenges you have regarding that, regarding your long distance running. And I can see I can see and hear a determination there in trying to find new knowledge and trying to find new ways of doing it to continue to improve that. And nothing beats that. The body will only improve dependent on what input of stimuli is applied on it. The body will always respond to that. Yes. So good luck with you on that one. And listen, let's have another catch up. I will get you back on the show. It's been a terrific night having a chat with you, and you have a good night.
Thank you for your time. Thanks.
Yeah. Cheers. Yeah.